Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people's story. After 23 years of military service, I finally had enough saved up to buy my dream property. Not some fancy mansion or beachfront condo, but 15 acres of honest-to-goodness ranch land about 30 minutes outside city limits. The property wasn't much to look at by suburban standards, I suppose. A modest 3-bedroom farmhouse that needed some TLC, a sturdy old barn, a couple of outbuildings, and plenty of open space where I could finally breathe. What made it perfect was the small creek running through the back 5 acres, the mature oak trees providing shade around the house, and most importantly, the freedom to finally live life on my own terms. No more following orders, no more deployments, no more cramped base housing with neighbors close enough to hear every argument. I spent 6 months before retirement researching properties. This particular piece of land belonged to an elderly gentleman who was moving to assisted living, and I could tell he was relieved to sell to someone who appreciated the place for what it was, rather than a developer looking to subdivide. I made sure to do my due diligence, poring over every document at the county clerk's office, researching easements, water rights, and zoning regulations. Everything checked out perfectly. The first month on my new property was pure bliss. I spent my days fixing up the farmhouse, clearing some overgrown areas, and planning where I'd put the chicken coop. I bought myself a used tractor at auction and started learning how to use it without embarrassing myself too badly. In the evenings, I'd sit on my porch with a cold beer, watching the sunset and thinking that all those years of military discipline and sacrifice had finally paid off. That peace was shattered on a Tuesday afternoon in May. I was stacking hay bales I'd purchased from a neighboring farmer when I noticed an unfamiliar black SUV with a magnetic door sign pulling through my front gate. 2 people, a man and a woman, both dressed in matching navy blue polo shirts with some kind of logo, emerged carrying clipboards. I set down the hay bale I'd been moving and walked over, wondering if they might be from the county or utility company. As they approached, I could see they both had the same forced smile people wear when they're about to ask for something they know you don't want to give. "Good afternoon," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm from Whispering Pines Community Association, and this is my colleague. We're conducting our monthly compliance inspection." I shook her hand out of habit, but was already confused. "I think you might have the wrong property. This isn't part of any development." The man chuckled in a way that immediately set my teeth on edge. "Actually, sir, your property falls within our jurisdiction now. We're here because we've noted several violations that need to be addressed." He handed me a printed sheet of paper with an official-looking letterhead. At the top, it read, "Notice of Violations," followed by a list. Unapproved fencing style and materials, livestock, chickens, not permitted per Section 8.3 of Covenants, commercial agricultural equipment tractor, visible from roadway, improper storage of hay, feed, creating unsightly conditions, mailbox not conforming to community standards. "These violations need to be remedied within 14 days, the woman continued. "After that period, fines will begin at $50 per violation per day." I looked up from the paper, trying to maintain my composure. "There must be some mistake. This property isn't part of any homeowners association. I specifically checked that before purchasing." The man sighed as if explaining something to a child. "The association has expanded its boundaries through recent acquisitions. Your property now falls within our purview." He gestured broadly toward the upscale development visible about half a mile down the road. "As this area becomes more refined, all properties need to maintain certain standards. The days of just doing whatever you want out here are over." The woman nodded in agreement. "We understand it takes some country folks time to get with the program, but these standards protect everyone's property values." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that getting angry would only make things worse. "I appreciate you taking the time to come out here, but I'm going to need to see documentation showing that my property is legally bound by your covenants. Because when I purchased this land just over a month ago, there was absolutely nothing in the title work indicating I was part of any HOA. The man's smile tightened. "We'll have our management company send over the documentation. In the meantime, you should begin addressing these issues. The board doesn't grant many extensions." They left another copy of the violation notice on my porch railing, climbed back into their SUV, and drove away before I could ask any more questions. That night, I dug through all my closing documents again, confirming what I already knew. My property was not part of any homeowners association. I'd specifically avoided HOA properties after hearing horror stories from military buddies who'd bought in planned communities. The next morning, I called the county clerk's office and scheduled an appointment to review the property records again. The clerk, a helpful older woman who remembered me from my previous visits, pulled everything they had on my parcel. "No, nothing has changed," she confirmed after reviewing the records. Your property is outside city limits, zoned agricultural residential. There are no covenants or restrictions filed except for the standard utility easements along the road frontage. Whoever told you you're in an HOA is mistaken. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Over the next 2 weeks, the harassment escalated. I spotted people in those same navy polos taking pictures of my property from the road. Twice more, I found violation notices tucked into my gate or mailbox, each with increasing fine amounts. My nearest neighbor, an elderly farmer who'd lived on his land for 40 years, stopped by one afternoon to warn me. "Those HOA folks been asking questions about you," he told me as we sat on my porch. "They've been pushing their weight around with several of us out here. Got old Mrs. Wilson 2 properties over to take down her clothesline and repaint her shed last year. She was too afraid of their legal threats to fight back." "Did they have any actual authority over her property?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not a bit. But they flashed enough official-looking paperwork that she got scared. She's a widow on a fixed income. Can't afford lawyers." That conversation was eye-opening. The next day, I received a certified letter threatening legal action if I didn't immediately comply with their demands. That was the final straw. I took a week of leave from my new job at the local Veterans Center and got to work. First, I visited a lawyer who specialized in real estate and property rights. She reviewed all my documentation and confirmed what I already knew. "This is a clear case of HOA overreach," she explained. "Unfortunately, it's becoming more common as developments expand into rural areas. They're counting on people being intimidated or not knowing their rights." With her guidance, I filed formal documentation with the county clerk explicitly stating my property's independent status and non-affiliation with any homeowners association. I also had her draft a letter demanding the HOA cease and desist all harassment and trespassing. Next, I installed clear no trespassing and private property signs at my gate and along my property line, with specific language stating HOA representatives not permitted entry without written permission. I also set up game cameras at strategic points to document any unauthorized visitors. Through some research and conversations with locals, I learned some interesting facts about the Whispering Pines HOA board. The president owned the landscaping company that had all the maintenance contracts for the subdivision. The compliance officer was a real estate agent who had sold many of the homes in the development and was currently listing several more. They had financial incentives to keep expanding their control. About a week after installing my cameras, I got the evidence I needed. The same 2 HOA representatives drove onto my property, walked right past my no trespassing signs, and were placing another violation notice on my door when I confronted them, phone in hand, to record the interaction. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "You're trespassing on private property." The woman looked startled. "We're just delivering a notice of—" I cut her off. "You've passed multiple clearly posted no trespassing signs to enter my property without permission. That's criminal trespassing under state law. I've documented your previous entries as well." I held up my phone, showing them footage from my security cameras of their previous visits. "This property is not part of your HOA. I have documentation from the county confirming this fact. Your continued harassment and trespassing will result in legal action against both your association and you personally." The man's face reddened. "We're just doing our job. The board has determined—" "The board has no authority here," I interrupted again. "I'm asking you to leave my property now. Any further communication needs to go through my attorney." I handed them each a business card for my lawyer. They left quickly after that, but I knew this wasn't over. I took the footage to my lawyer, who immediately added it to the cease and desist documentation. She filed trespassing complaints with the county sheriff's office and prepared a more extensive legal action outlining harassment, attempted property devaluation, and abuse of authority. While waiting for the legal process to work, I visited several of my neighbors whom the HOA had been intimidating. Many were elderly or working families who couldn't afford legal battles. I shared copies of my research and lawyers' findings, showing them they weren't legally bound by the HOA demands. One neighbor, a retired teacher, revealed she'd been paying $200 monthly HOA dues for almost a year, despite not being in the association. Another had spent thousands replacing a perfectly good fence because of HOA threats. Together, we formed an informal alliance of affected property owners. The breaking point came when my lawyer discovered the HOA had never properly filed the expanded boundaries they claimed to have. In fact, they'd been representing themselves as having legal authority they simply didn't possess. 3 weeks after my confrontation with the HOA representatives, my lawyer delivered a comprehensive legal package to each board member personally. It contained County documentation proving my property's independence, evidence of multiple trespassing incidents, statements from neighbors documenting a pattern of intimidation, notification of intent to pursue damages, reference to 3 similar cases in neighboring counties where HOA had been successfully sued for overreach. The package also included an invitation to attend a community meeting for affected property owners, along with an offer to resolve the matter without court proceedings if the HOA immediately ceased all activity targeting non-member properties. The evening of our community meeting, we were surprised when 3 members of the HOA board showed up. Not the president or compliance officer, but other members who seemed genuinely shocked by what they were hearing. Most of us had no idea this was happening, one of them admitted. We were told these properties had been properly incorporated into our jurisdiction. The truth came out over the next week. The board president and compliance officer had been systematically targeting properties outside their boundaries, collecting fines and forcing compliance to make the entire area conform to their standards. In some cases, they'd even collected dues from people who weren't members. The landscaping contracts and real estate values provided clear financial motives. The board called an emergency session where the president and compliance officer were forced to resign. They issued a formal retraction and apology to all affected property owners, along with restitution for those who had paid improper fines or made unnecessary changes to their properties. As for me, I completed my chicken coop the following weekend. I named my first rooster Freedom as a small personal joke. My old tractor sits proudly in my side yard where I can easily access it for work around the property. The hay bales are stacked neatly behind the barn, ready for winter. And my fence remains exactly as it was, sturdy and practical rather than decorative. The most satisfying moment came about a month after everything was resolved. I hosted a barbecue for the neighbors who had stood together against the HOA as we sat around picnic tables in my yard, enjoying food and friendship. One of the former HOA board members who had helped expose the wrongdoing stopped by. She brought a housewarming gift, a hand-painted sign that now hangs in my kitchen. It reads, "This is not an HOA-approved decoration." Sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting your own rights, but about ensuring others aren't taken advantage of either. My military career taught me many things, but perhaps the most important was knowing which battles are worth fighting. This one definitely was. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I'm a millwright who specializes in rebuilding natural gas turbines. I run with a very top-caliber crew where everyone has a role to fill. My role is overseeing anything that's lifted with a crane. My technical title is rigger. If a load falls, it's my fault. If someone gets hurt while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. If equipment is damaged while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. The incident in question happened about 2 years ago, but we'll need to go back a couple years farther to get the backstory. I was a fresh member of the crew and had demonstrated competency in rigging, so after roughly 6 months with this group, my superintendent put me in charge of all rigging. I wasn't the fastest rigger, but I was safety-focused and insisted on doing it right every time, even if it took a little longer. This meant that my superintendent didn't have to watch over every rigging task and could go relax because I had it under control. Another millwright joined the crew about the same time I did. We'll call him Larry. We didn't get along at first, but after a few months we became friends. Larry was the act now, think later type, much like the superintendent I travel under. Larry was prone to making mistakes because of that attitude, but he was very fast and worked like a mule at all times, and I respected that. He wasn't especially skilled in any one area, so he had no special position. That meant sometimes he'd get put on less glamorous work, and I soon learned he was very jealous of my position as the rigger. At times, he would make comments like, "I'm gonna take your job." Not in getting me fired, but bumping me down a rung and him taking my spot as rigger. He'd come up behind me while I was looking over my checklist to point out something I may not have checked yet. If supervision was near, he'd make sure he was heard. At this point, I should mention this. I stick out like a sore thumb on this crew. I was raised in a very strict Christian cult, but in my mid-20s, I realized what was going on and left, at great cost, losing my family and friends because of strict shunning rules the cult practices. Some of the stricter things stuck with me, like I've never been intoxicated. I don't use tobacco. No recreational drugs. I speak professionally, without slang or colloquialisms for the most part. These traits stick out from a crew of men that travel the road and work in harsh environments away from home for months on end. But Larry, he fits right in. Larry quickly became the superintendent's puppy, bringing him gifts of his favorite alcohol, staying out late after work with him, even rooming with him on the road. I, on the other hand, leave work, hit the gym, cook my food for the next day, and make sure I get at least 6 hours of sleep so I can perform the next day. I realize that puts me at a disadvantage socially in the workplace, but I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Anyways, fast forward about 18 months, we're starting a project just before COVID hits. About 2 weeks into the job, I have to attend a mandatory class through my union. It's a 40-hour class and in a different state, so I'll be gone for pretty much an entire week with travel time. I get permission from supervision and leave, with Larry rigging in my absence. A few days later, I'm laying in bed, stressing out about the final test I have to take the next morning. If the test isn't passed, the entire week is wasted. I always psych myself out before a test, but in reality, I don't have anything to worry about as I'm a good student and test well. My phone goes off. It's a text from Larry. "I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat," I reply. "What are you talking about?" "When you get back, I'll be the rigger. You can do the crap work from now on." I'm not proud of the response I came back with, but it's how I truly felt in the moment. Be careful about cutting the throat of someone smarter than you. I'm far from the smartest person you'll ever meet, but I do enjoy reading, studying, and learning. And being smarter than Larry wasn't an accomplishment by any stretch of the imagination. The next morning, I passed the test and headed back to the job, where Larry had in fact usurped my position as rigger and was lording it over me as I went about doing the tasks he normally would do. To be completely honest, it was kind of like a vacation at first. Get paid nearly $40 an hour to clean parts or torque flanges with no stress? Sign me up. But I was upset. I was upset because I knew I did my job better than he would. I knew that he got along better with the superintendent because of their similar personalities. But I didn't feel that I should lose my position simply because Larry had more in common with our superintendent than I did. Regardless of that, I was now dealt these cards, and I had to play them. Just 3 days after I got back from class, though, the job was shut down. COVID-19 was just now sweeping the country. Out of an abundance of caution, the plant shut the project down until further notice. We were sent home for about 3 days and then called out to an emergency shutdown where a turbine had crashed. We roll out and are on the job 48 hours later in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. We get right to work. On this particular unit, you pull the entire roof off in 2 sections with a crane to open the enclosure. Compared to many things we lift in a project like this, the roof weighs very little. The turbine rotor may weigh over 100,000 pounds, but the roof usually weighs around 7,000 pounds. Lightweight. But it is large and there are critical parts around the roof that can be damaged if not lifted carefully. Typical procedure is to be on top of the roof after it's unbolted, be in a full-body harness and tied off to an approved anchor point capable of holding at least 5,000 pounds per OSHA regulations. We then slowly take the weight of the roof with the crane until it's floating and then climb down off of it and continue the lift until it's set on the ground or on a truck to be moved. The superintendent instructs me to go on the roof with Larry and assist him. Do whatever Larry tells you to do. Okay, boss. I put on my harness and climb to the top and begin to assess the situation. The rigging to lift the roof is 4 5-ton chain falls. It's capable of safely holding 20 tons, well over the weight of the roof. The crane is also well overrated for this lift, even with the boom extended all the way out in order to clear another building on the way to the ground. Larry has it all rigged up, but no tension on the wire rope slings. And then I notice his crucial mistake. He has forgot to account for boom deflection. When a crane takes the weight of a load, the boom flexes down. Depending on the crane setup and the weight of the load, it can mean that while your crane hook might be centered in your load with no weight on the hook, once you get the weight of the load on the crane hook could be anywhere from a few inches to a number of feet off center, which means that when the load come off the ground, it swings. Swinging is bad, always. Enough weight swinging could tip the crane, crash into equipment, crash into a person. It's very dangerous. At this point, I start calculating, is this weight enough even swinging to tip this crane? No, not even close. Is it enough to break a chain fall? No, not even close. Are there any people working around us that could get hurt? Nope, it's just us. Is there any equipment that could be damaged if it swings? Yes. An electrical control panel which has all power killed to it and has been disconnected is in the swing path. I decide to let Larry hang himself. He looks at me and asks what I think. I tell him, "This is your show, boss." He asks what I mean. I look him in the eye and draw my finger across my throat. He gets nervous because he knows exactly what I mean. Starts double-checking everything. He still doesn't notice the boom deflection. After a couple minutes, he decides I must be talking out of my ass and proceeds with the lift. I stop him and remind him to tie off with his harness. He doesn't realize it, but we're about to go for a ride. Generally, when I'm rigging, I first find out what the thing I'm rigging to weighs. It's a vital piece of information. If I know what it weighs, I can have the crane operator track how much weight he has on the crane, and I'll be able to know when the object should start to pick up. If we get to over 10% more than the object should weigh, there may be something stopping it from moving, and we need to stop and reassess the situation. Rigging could fail, the object you're lifting could jump into the sky, all kinds of mayhem may ensue if a hidden bolt holding something together breaks because you used too much force to lift it. I ask Larry if he knows how much the roof weighs. He doesn't. I do, but don't tell him. He starts signaling the crane to slowly hoist up. The operator complies and starts lifting. I'm watching the boom get pulled more and more off-center. We're probably 2 feet from the center of the load at this point, meaning a swing that could travel nearly 4 feet. I stop Larry and ask him to see how much weight is on the crane. 11,000 pounds, 4,000 more than what it should weigh. This roof is in a bind because we're not picking it straight up but at an angle. It's either not going to move or we're about to fly. I brace myself. "Hoist up slowly," Larry calls over the radio. Boom! The whole roof shoots a good 2 feet into the air and swings wildly towards the control panel. Larry and I are riding it like pirates in the crow's nest in a hurricane. We crash into the control panel, bending it over at a 45-degree angle, destroying most of its components. People start pouring out of the nearby trailers to see what the commotion is all about. The crane operator is yelling over the radio, asking what the hell just happened. I'm smiling. Larry is shaking. He sees me smiling and knows that I knew. We get the roof set on the ground and are met by our superintendent. He's chewing Larry's ass hard. He gets to me and asks why I let it happen. I just say, I just did what Larry told me to do. The superintendent is no dummy. He's seen a thing or two and knows exactly what went down. Larry is demoted, and I'm reinstalled as rigger immediately. And a few shifts later, it's all smoothed over. Larry and I are actually good friends now. We've been through a lot together and have each other's backs these days. He's now the foreman on our crew, and lets me do my thing. Failing your way to the top is still a valid way of progressing in my field, but I'm happy for him. He's actually good at it. And I guess that's all there is to say about that. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.